Run at 7 o'clock. All the idle chit chatters over, and welcome to our February meeting, and welcome to 2022, which has turned out to be worse than 2021, in my opinion. But welcome everyone. Just a few procedural things. Because we're all on Zoom, turn off your microphones. We don't need to hear all the idle chit chat that's going on behind you, the telephone ringing. I'm not sure on other devices, but on Windows devices, it's in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm Peter Bacon. I'm sort of your MC for the night. And tonight's program, we've got two speakers. We've got Sue Barrett and Jobst Ashenblack. I've probably said that wrong. And their topic is going to be community activism and the big deal with hardware, website performance and security and messaging. There'll be time, I hope, for questions. Following that, there'll be a special AGM, which David will explain to you. Then a coffee break, and during the coffee break, David will explain this to you. You will be able to vote, and that will be explained to you. Following the coffee break, we'll have the President's report from our esteemed President, David Stoney Gibson. Then Rob Brown is going to give us a bit of a rundown on using Google Workspace. Following that, we've got I'd Help with Bert Elish, and then we'll close at 9 o'clock. So welcome everyone. And just remember that this is being recorded. So if you happen to say anything, you'll come up on the screen, and everyone on the World Wide Web will see you. So our speakers tonight is Sue Barrett. She's an entrepreneur and systems thinker. Sue is best known for her work as an ethical and sustainable business growth strategist, sales system specialist, educator, consultant, advisor, writer, and change agent for better business, integrity, gender equality, and climate action. Jobst is the general manager and systems administrator. Jobst is originally from Münster in northwest Germany, where he completed a trade apprenticeship as a fitter and turner, then a Bachelor of Engineering, mechanical, but found the profession to be too restrictive. Jobst migrated to Australia in 1989, where he switched his focus to completing a Bachelor of Digital Systems with first-class honours at Monash University. Having found his niche, Jobst became highly knowledgeable and a professional and a proficient IT professional who is very familiar and hands-on with both hardware and software. He is passionate about IT security, sustainability, integrity, equality, and climate action. So I'll pass over to our President, David, who's got a few questions for our speakers. David?
Thank you, Peter. Well, what a day this has been with this vote thing happening. I think I might have just enough energy to carry on for the rest of this meeting. Welcome to Sue and Jobst. It's nice to have you here. We had a very pleasant chat at the club a few, 2-3 weeks ago, where I learned about this thing that they had been involved in. So the March for Justice, Sue. What's all that, and how do you get involved in it?
Yeah, it was one of those sort of sliding door moments, to be honest. I don't know if everyone remembers back on the 15th of February when the news broke about Brittany Higgins at Parliament House, Canberra, and, you know, the horrific things that were alleged to have happened there. Well, I was listening to that as well. And I have to say that night I found it very difficult to sleep because it brought up lots of things for me and my friends and the things we've had to deal with as women in business and so on and so forth for a very long time. And in 2017, I'd written an article called No More Harvey Weinsteins, Please. So I re-released that out just in sort of, you know, support of what happened to Brittany. And that got picked up by 2CC Canberra, the main commercial radio station there. And I got invited to speak on the Drive program at just after the 5 o'clock news that Wednesday evening to comment on the comments of the Prime Minister and how he had to, you know, refer to Jenny as to how would you handle this sort of stuff. So I was in preparation for that. I also discovered that what was really shocking was that in Parliament House, Canberra, the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984 does not apply there. Everywhere else it applies to all workplaces, but not in Parliament House, Canberra.
Not in that place.
Not in that place, and nor do they have an HR department or policy. So basically, it's a free for all. And as you'd appreciate, I wasn't the only one who was a bit miffed by all of this. There were many more people out there who are ensconced by that. So what actually happened was that I shared that radio interview on Twitter, and I'm quite politically active on Twitter, and it got shared and shared. And then on the 28th of February, this woman called Janine Hendry, I didn't see this tweet, but through other people I was connected to, that she tweeted, how many people would it take to surround Parliament House, Canberra, for us to show our disgust at what happened? And could we go up there on the 15th of March, which was the first day back of sitting in Parliament, so a work day on a Monday? And someone tweeted back 4,000. That's if we held our hands and sort of did a ring around Parliament House, Canberra. And so basically that's sort of precipitated all sorts of discussions. And I ended up seeing a tweet from someone who I connected with through that radio interview, and they said, who could build a website for this? And I looked across at Jobst and I said, do you want to build a website for this? And he went, sure. So I said, we can. And that's how we got involved. And we got to meet Janine Hendry, who was the tweeter of the how many people around, Parliament House, who many of you may have seen as the main spokesperson when it really got ahead of steam. And so we met her and one other person via Zoom on the 2nd of March at 9 o'clock in the morning. And they said, oh, can you build a website? And Jobst said, yes, I can. And I said, look, here's what's really important. We've got to have messaging on there that is inclusive, and it has to be treated as a human issue, not just a women's issue. And so if you'd like, I can smash out this, what I would call the messaging that needs to go on this website, and we'll get that up. And so Jobst and I managed to get a website up and active with some core messaging by about 5 o'clock that afternoon, including getting, the URL and all of that. And that's how it started. And then that's the 2nd of March. And remember the day of the event was the 15th of March. And it went off it just went off. And essentially, that messaging, and I'll talk a bit about that later, but we managed to get over 110,000 people across 200 locations around the country. We got 7,000 people to turn up to Canberra. We weren't allowed to put a ring around Parliament House, so we met on the forecourt, on the grass. And I think there were over 10,000 people in Melbourne, and there were 15,000 in Sydney. Anyway, it just went off. And so we know that on the Saturday before the march, that the website itself got over 800,000 hits from Australia alone, 40,000 from the US and 30,000 from Europe. And on the day of the march, the website got over 1 million hits. The website we kept building and building because people said, can we have a march? We can have a march. The website had to keep expanding and have all the different things involved. So that's kind of how it got started.
Wow.
Wow. By the way, it wasn't just the website. There were social media teams. The team grew to an enormous thing. So we were responsible for the website, for the kind of customer service. I processed over 500 emails coming through that website. But we were one cog, if you like, in a very big sort of wheel that just grew. We all, the key group flew to Canberra on the Saturday morning, and we set up Operation Central there. And as I said, we turned up to Canberra in our little T-shirts and things like that. Look, honestly, it was nuts, but it was one of the most amazing experiences of our lives.
I'll say. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. So, look, I have to go a little bit off script there, because you reminded me of when I built my first company website in around about February 1996 with 16 color GIF images in it, or little things, and I put up an order form for our product, which is a very obscure electronic controller thing. And the next morning went rushing into the office and to look on the fax machine. Most of the people here actually know what a fax machine was, to see how many orders would arrive. And guess what? There weren't any. I think it took about 3 months before we got our first order come in on the fax. So it's amazing how it's amazing what things can make a difference. Obviously, you had something there was going to strike a chord with an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
There've been some beautiful pre-publicity, I guess, from the Prime Minister and others to get your cause going, and it just took off.
Yeah, it really tapped into just this visceral, pain and trauma and frustration and anger and actually rage, where everyone was just sick of it. And you probably saw the hashtag "enough is enough." I mean, everyone it had reached this point where we just went, it's enough. And what was amazing too is we actually had at least a quarter of the people that turned up were men. And so it really was a human issue.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So so you wound up with this massive big website with 1 million hits, and Jobst, you started thinking about when did you realize this was going to be a sort of security liability as well, that you're going to be under attack? I don't think my website's ever been under attack. Maybe I should feel bad about that, but how did you sort of get alert to that?
Well, it's the way this whole thing started. Firstly, we actually didn't know how much attraction we're going to get. We were at the beginning, we were saying, if we get 5,000 people, we are really, really, really good. And then, but the 5,000 people should have been in Canberra, but nowhere else. So also in the beginning, there wasn't much money around, because we had to set up a donation page that we then could feed back into the campaign, but that wasn't set up yet. So I basically went firstly to make sure that I had backup mechanism. I firstly went to the technical team at Digital Pacific. I use Digital Pacific for my sort of service that I have in the Sydney data center. And so I've been a customer with them for quite some time. So when of course, then when you ring and you ask them the right questions, they give you some time and they actually listen to you and make some good suggestions. So we were talking just to have a backup solution. I asked them about load balancing, and I asked them about how long that would take, and the setup process and the days involved and all of this stuff. And it turned out that I would have wasted probably 5 or 6 days before I would have had anything up and going. So 5 or 6 days, that would have been too late, because we had to get something out on a website so we could actually present something. So then I asked about, what about other machines? And I thought about virtual servers, because the advantage of virtual servers is you can just basically extend them. You put more CPUs in it, you put more RAM in it, you put more drives in it. It's just so simple to expand them without actually losing the core data of the operating system. So I spoke with one of the guys over there, and we figured out too long to set up. So what I then did, speaking to another, did some research, and I figured out, I thought about AWS and Akami or any other of the things. And then one person said to me, Cloudflare. So I went back to the Digital Pacific.
Whoops, we just lost you, Jobst. Hello. No, everyone's frozen. No, I'll Sue, I think it was a drop out of your NBN actually, because you were frozen too.
Okay. All right. So you have the Cloudflare, Jobst.
Cloudflare. Flare.
Yep.
You know Flare?
Yep.
It's basically Flare comes from them distracting where you are. It's sort of pushing you to another thing.
Yep.
And so the guy was so nice, because he basically wasn't selling me anything, because he was basically saying, go to Cloudflare and set it up all there. So I did. But in the meantime, while I was doing all of this, I was actually already creating the website. And so I did that on one of my servers that was already standing in the data center, which is a Dell PowerEdge M710, which is a reasonable size machine, 32 gig, 8-core Xeon, huge amount of RAM. I think it's 64 gigabytes. So I had ample of power in that machine. So I just put the website in there. What I basically did is I copied an already existing website, so I didn't need to do all the preparation, all the base, all the core
Formatting and framework.
all of that stuff. And then I actually went ahead and copied a database of an existing web page across into that server. Then I took the core files of the root directory of the website and basically dumped it over there. And then for the next hour, I basically deleted pages that I didn't need, and then basically kept the bare bone that I thought was the most important part. And then in the meantime, I then set up Cloudflare, which has such a massive advantage, because it gives it not only provides the security that you need, but it provides the so many attacking protection, but it also provides the DNS, because you can't use Cloudflare without them providing the DNS, which means, again, I didn't need to look after the DNS as well, because that was looked after from Cloudflare. And because Cloudflare have such massive distribution of name servers, that even with a high usage, I knew already that they would provide enough bandwidth of name queries for that machine. So that gave me another point of relaxing. So hang on, I need to sorry. So with the Cloudflare system, I have there is the attacking protection, because they check the traffic that goes through there and check whether it comes from the same website over and over and over again. They lock that IP address. They also they also have a DDoS protection. So again, something I didn't need to be worried about that. So to take the suggestion from the Digital Pacific guy to use Cloudflare in my own machine made it quite easy for me not to have to put too much effort into it, because I mean, from the 3rd of March to the 15th of March, I didn't have much time. So Cloudflare was the actual best solution. And the Cloudflare solution then afterwards, because they do the caching, that I looked at the most traffic parts. So the Cloudflare were picking up the most traffic was just a few amount of traffic actually coming up and checking whether the page data had actually changed to actually refresh the cache and then serve that new page to the internet. So I ended up with using the Cloudflare that the server had a sort of usage of maybe 30-35%. It was basically cruising. Even on the Saturday or Sunday, it was literally lying at 42%, and there was no spikes. It was all taken up by Cloudflare. But I had other security features built into the website itself. There's plugin that's called WordFence that puts another level of security on top of it. They have a huge database of IP addresses of known spammers, attackers, DDoS things. They have a huge amount of URLs that are known to attacking URLs. So they again shield the whole website, not having to serve the request that is basically block it. And so I didn't have much problems, but the advantage of me, one of the biggest advantages that I had in that whole process from the 3rd of March to the, let's say 13th of March, the Friday before the actual weekend, that I was able to look at the slowly ever increasing traffic. So I could actually see with a projection of what it could be like in 2 or 3 days' time by just looking at the current traffic and then plotting the traffic along to see what actually happens to the increase in traffic.
Yep.
So I was by the probably 3 days before, 4 days before, I was quite confident that I was able to provide with that hardware that I had, which was one single machine, one single Dell 710 with a Cloudflare thing in front of it. I was able to determine by Wednesday, the day before, the Wednesday before that, I was quite fine, and they would be the website would
crash and burn. Yeah,
wouldn't crash, wouldn't burn.
Yeah.
So that was quite amazing to see, and quite relaxing actually, without being getting frantic. The one thing that I was a bit more worried about was the noise, in that we had this huge hotel room in Canberra. We arrived on the Friday, and we had this huge hotel room. The noise in that room, because there was 15 people in that room, the noise in that room was more worrying than what I saw the graphs are plotting on the Cloudflare side. So I was quite happy.
What you mean, just the noise of people
Chatting,
doing
yes.
being people and disturbing your brain patterns?
Yes. And
yeah, I had to take him out for a walk a few times just to help him decompress. But you've got to remember, we had the event secured over 7,000 unique media impressions around the world. So we had media, all the main media across Australia, BBC, NBC, CNN, Time Magazine, New York Times, you name it. We had the world's media watching what we were doing. And so our media person was incredible fielding all of this stuff to be able to, I mean, Janine, who was the main spokesperson, honestly, she was having several, when we got to Canberra, she was having several media, be it via radio or in actually Parliament House in their media studios. It was nuts. As I said, it was incredible the amount of attention it actually got, which is why I think we got a whole lot of traffic also from the US and Europe as well.
Okay, well, the question comes to mind then, who's writing the movie script and who's playing you and Jobst?
I know we're just the background. We're in the background. There's a lot of people out the front. It was honestly you've got to appreciate that this thing lit a fuse, and basically strangers got together and organized something incredible to have 200 events happen around the country. 110,000 people rock up. I mean, BEng had 500 people march down the street at lunchtime on a Monday. This is on a work day. People were turning up.
Cheesy. Yeah.
So it was really amazing. Just all these and what would happen on this customer service line, which I basically sitting up in Canberra and also during that second week, we got so many people writing into us, obviously there's a lot of trauma for people as well. And we had to make sure there was some sort of, we obviously couldn't help them directly, but direct them to people. But we got emails saying, can we start a march here? Can we do that there? And so Jobst had to keep just adding to the events page all these different marches so that people could find us. There was a spreadsheet that had to be added out to all the different people that were coming together, event organisers. We had to manage safety and security. We had to make sure that people's well-being was looked after. We were getting threats like, the potential of those Proud Boys turning up to the event. That made us a bit scared, and they didn't eventuate. But, these are things that were coming in. The trolls were coming in at us as well. We had some people getting really cross at our movement because why are you stealing our thunder and blah. And I spoke to some of these people and I said, I'm not trying to sell it to you. I'm trying to sell it to, people who, have perhaps been a bit asleep or not paying attention to this. We want to attract these sorts of people. So it was just the human interaction, the human communication, the system to actually support all of that so that we could stay in touch and engage with these people. The social media team, my goodness, they had to manage a whole lot of stuff too. And of course, Twitter was going nuts. Facebook, we had to have moderators because of course, trolls would get into those Facebook groups. So it was really intense. Like, I don't think I've ever been in something so intense in my life. And as I said, we turned it around in less than 14 days to go from nothing to having that sort of thing happen. So I think we lived off about 3 hours sleep a night, and we were all a bit sort of like pretty wired, by the end of it. And but when we marched up to Parliament House, Canberra, we managed to get little T-shirts made as well for the organising group, and we marched up there, and we had a Canberra crew on the ground that had done an incredible job to get the event really professionally done. As we were walking up to Parliament House with our black, hashtag March for Justice T-shirts on, people started to join us and they say, oh, are you the organisers? This is not just Jobst and me, but a bunch of us. And we went, yeah, we're the organisers. They're going, oh my God, thank you so much. This is amazing. There's this. We had little girls there, little boys there. We had women who were from the 70s, feminist movement there who thought the whole thing had died. We had people in tears. We had, as I said, people of all walks of life. We had men, we had women, we had all sorts of people there. And honestly, it was one of those things that make you proud of humanity, where people just turned up for something that was really important and actually made their voices heard. But yeah, you've got to give people a reason, and you've got to make sure your messaging is very clear so they can feel included. Because a lot of the messaging around helping women have equality and that has always been very divisive. And I said to Janine on that morning, this has to be inclusive. It has to be treated as a human issue. We have to bring people together, not send them apart.
Wow. Okay.
So if I can say something to you about Jobst and I have been together over 30 years now, and I have a science degree originally from Monash University in medical science subjects and stuff. But as I said, I'm a systems thinker, but I'm also very much about being human-centered. And when I started our business back 27 years ago, and he was doing his PhD in digital systems and fuzzy logic, I had no clue what he was actually doing, but I read his philosophy. And I said, actually, you and I do the same thing. You just do it with machines and I do it with people. And that's kind of how we roll together as a unit, he and I, that we try to bring technology to create human connection, if that makes sense. Yeah. And we actually managed to help do this as a part of, not the only part, of course, but as a part of the March for Justice. Yeah.
Well, fuzzy logic is certainly a big part of current thinking patterns in human beings, I'm afraid. And yeah, I do know what fuzzy logic is because it's in the past in my career as well.
So Downing's got a hand up. I don't know whether she wants to ask a question.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yeah, Mary, yeah. Just unmute your microphone, Mary.
You may have clicked on the wrong icon to vote.
Okay, we'll move along then. So I think you've answered probably a lot of the questions I might be asking, Jobst. So what's lessons, what's your takeaway from all this? What have you learned from all this? Mary, did you have a question?
No.
That's interesting.
My takeaway.
Yeah, your takeaway.
It's there's probably, oh, I've got an echo.
Yes, I think Mary has to mute herself because she's got two screens up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
That's right.
There's two sides of this whole story, I think, and one is, of course, the technical aspect. When you look on the internet, and this is what I did too, was doing first some research. You learn very quickly that there's lots of people who want to sell you something, and it seems you, especially when you step in the dark, and when you don't know what scale the whole thing is going to be. So what I've learned probably is that it's better to ask around first, some other people, even if they haven't been at that kind of level what you expect, but at least can give you some guidelines. So the person I spoke, the couple of people I spoke to in my data center, and one of the people who gave me that advice to use Cloudflare, and basically selling him out of a service, selling me another server or maybe another couple of other servers. So I guess the one thing I learned is you gotta have to ask, and you don't have to, you should not to be afraid to ask the questions and the tricky questions. And if you figure out that they just there to sell you something, walk away and go somewhere else. That's one of the questions. The second question is, the second thing is, when we got together in that room, it's quite interesting to see the amount of egos sitting in a room trying to convince everybody else this is the way to go. And so there was the one thing I learned in that room is just to stay calm and to be yourself, and you know, not get distracted by that. And the funny thing enough, what we and what Sue and I heard every now and then afterwards is, gee, you two are so calm. I wish I would be like that. Remember, Sue?
Yeah. It was that interesting feeling of where it was like, it was just so, it was moving at warp speed, but you actually had to sort of hold yourself and be very clear about what your role was. I think the thing that I learned out of all of this, because it happened so fast, there was no organizational structure. It had to kind of grow as it went. I mean, I've learned a lot. I actually learned a lot of lessons from this March for Justice warp speed experience, which I'm now using, you know, the good and the bad that came from it, that I'm now using very much in terms of my role as campaign manager for Zoe Daniel. And also in terms of Jobst is responsible for the website there. And we have a bit more time, not 14 days. So I can learn a lot from that. When you bring community together, role clarity is really important. Good messaging is really important. Good structure is really important. And because we're now a hybrid in a way, whilst we can interact with each other human to human, we're also using technology a lot to communicate. And one of the things that I notice about a lot of people, and I'm not speaking March for Justice per se, I'm just speaking generally, is, you know, a lot of people don't know how to communicate messages effectively. It takes a long time to write a short letter. you know, so a lot of people either write too much and then you've got to wade through all of that, or they don't know how to write something that's written for the audience they're communicating with, whether that's an individual or that's a group of people. And so you then end up with messaging that can be, you know, fraught with misunderstandings and misinterpretations and angst and anger and blah, 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 blah. And that soaks up a lot of time. So I do notice that staying calm and being clear about your role, what you're there to do, reminding people of what they're there to do, and helping people sort and organize and prioritize. So one of the things that I'm really good at is project management and keeping people really on task. And so I think stepping out of the maelstrom of everything and just kind of take that sort of helicopter systems view, come back in, and then fix those bits and pieces, keep the system rolling. And I mean system as in human system, and Jobst is the IT system, but they all intersect because everyone has to communicate. The other thing that was interesting with the emails that were coming through from March for Justice, and also too with Zoe's campaign and other things I've been involved with, is that some people say, oh, just tell them to go to the website, right? You know, just tell them to go to the events page. But you shouldn't. I mean, I read every single one of those 500 emails that came in to March for Justice, and I responded. There's 3 death threats, which I didn't worry about, okay? But I responded to every single one of those emails. Now, many of them were media, which I then immediately directed towards, and then Jobst built in a media page as well, so they would go straight to our media person. But I would look and read, and I would then respond appropriately to the tone and the sentiment for that person, so that they would feel, rightly so, that their voice had been heard, because this was such an important subject. You could not dismiss them. And I do think sometimes with IT, one of the biggest issues when people try to AI things, you know, they automate stuff and have these responses, it loses the humanity. And then people get really cranky, you know, customers, you know, and they, I mean, you know, when it's like trying to deal with the bank and you've got to go on their automated AI stuff. I mean, honestly, you know, they have their, you know, their live chat, you know, you just sit there going, you're not reading me as a human. You're just responding kind of mechanically. And I think businesses get so caught up in thinking, oh, let's AI everything, you know, automate everything, and so we can save costs. They cut the humanity out of it. So I made sure, even though it was a lot of work, that every person that came to March for Justice was responded to with a human approach and a caring approach. The emails I get through on Zoe Daniels' site, I made sure I read every single one of those and I respond to them appropriately. And you know what's really interesting? The feedback you get is people are so grateful. They thank you for your email. And so customer care, human care, I think, you know, it's a combination of everything. We all can intersect and work together, which is why Jobst and I do what we do, because it's not binary. It's not that or that, it's this. And that's what I think is really important for anyone running a business, anyone running, you know, community sites, anyone doing whatever you're doing, like we've been involved with and are involved with. Those lessons should never be forgotten.
The question that comes straight to my mind with that, Sue, which it sounds absolutely fantastic, how you can answer either how scalable is that, or how do you scale that?
Yeah, this is the challenge, you see.
Without outsourcing to Bangalore.
Well, that's right. Actually, I don't know if anyone noticed when you watched the tennis, if you did watch the tennis, that Telstra is bringing back their customer service teams on shore. And again, coming back to that human-to-human interaction. One of the things that's important is people need to learn how these soft skills, you know, these soft skills that people go, oh, yeah, soft skills, communication. Quite frankly, they're the hardest ones to master. How we communicate, how we engage people, how we write well-intentioned emails or have well-intentioned conversations. A lot of the work that I do professionally as a business, how we work with sales and service teams and all those sorts of things, is actually teaching them how to actually have these psychologically safe, effective communication exchanges and build healthy relationships and not dismiss people. You know when you're being listened to and you know when you're not, don't you? So these are skills you can teach people. Not everyone will be brilliant at it, but you can teach people to be much better at it. and actually know how to communicate. We do a lot of work with technical teams in our professional life as well. And I meet lots of people who are technical engineers of some sort. Some of them are on the spectrum and they're not always human, user-friendly from a human perspective, not because they're not nice people, they just don't have that kind of nuanced communication. I have found helping them have some process structures, knowing how to open conversations, how to ask questions, even if they're a bit clunky, it shows to the client because they love helping people. They just often forget to ask people that would they like help, So I build bridges for people who may have more clunky or not as naturally oriented communication capabilities. And I help them build processes that show them how to do it. And they actually do become much better at communicating. So this is why the world needs to be able to marry these two, the human side and the technical side together, and not see them as separate, and also think that this is just going to save you money. Whereas we know as customers or members, if people don't engage with us, and we are social creatures after all, we need human to human engagement. I hope that makes sense for people.
Yes, it does. It does make sense because I mean, in my business, I had to communicate with people all over the world, and actually, some memories were flashing. I won't bring them all up, but just talking to or communicating by email with people in America, just small linguistic differences could sometimes be a problem.
Absolutely.
And I will tell one little story. We had a guy who was after, we made electronic controllers, a guy who was after an adaptation, customized adaptation of the product we had. And very early in the piece, I said, yes, but there will be a price premium on that, but we can certainly do it. And he said, what do you think the price premium will be? I said, well, probably about $20 or something like that. And right at the very end of this whole process, I said, well, they're probably going to be about $70 rather than normal $50. He said, I thought you said $20. He didn't understand what a price premium was.
Exactly. And this is where Jobst does apologize because he has to actually go off to another meeting and things like that as well. So I'm happy to hang around if people want to ask me questions or talk further, but hopefully what Jobst has shared with you has been helpful in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, thank you, Jobst, for that, and good luck with your next undertaking this evening.
Yes.
Take care. Yeah, let's hear it for
I
Jobst.
have a couple of. I can answer one question if anybody has one question.
He's got 2 minutes to spare. Anyone got a question for Jobst?
No.
I think you've answered so many of the questions already, Jobst, that yeah. Good. Look, one tiny little question, if you like. You mentioned very early on, and just for the benefit of those people here who are not highly technical, you mentioned DNS as being, and the fact that your Cloudflare service had their own DNS network. In one quick sentence before you go off, what's the significance of that sort of closed DNS system?
Because I have my own DNS service for that I use for all the service that I provide, which is I have two DNS servers, two name servers.
Yep.
For the non-technical, DNS is translating the human readable form, which would be Microsoft.com, into an IP address, which is the machine readable form.
Yep.
And you need to have that to actually, so your computer can find the other machine, because that is the address. Cloudflare's distribution of DNS servers makes it very easy for me to forget that part of the story, because I don't have to worry about the huge amount of queries that come to them, because if like 10,000 machines at one stage try to find my machine, which is in that case, marchforjustice.com.au, then if the name servers don't provide the queries fast enough, that will slow down the process. But with Cloudflare's distributed name server system, the response is basically instant. And then the secondary response of providing cached data of my web pages makes the interaction with the client. So the client does the request and it comes immediately back at the client. So the time for the service to spend with that particular client to serve the request is very, very short, which gives then much more time for other requests to be served. So that's the distributed name serving system from Cloudflare is brilliant.
Right. Okay, thank you. And off you go.
Thank
All
you.
right. See you later.
Yeah, see you later. Yeah. Be home in time for cocoa.
Yeah, bye.
Yep. So how are we here? We've got a little bit of time left. Any other questions from the floor?
I've got my hand up, but I'll speak. Sue, in my previous life, I worked for an airline, and some of what you said rings there. Communication, how to talk to people was a very big thing. I'm a bit of a nut for air crash investigation. And if you ever watch them, it's interesting how many accidents are caused because you've got two people, I've got to be wary, they're all men in my day, but you've got two people, and if they don't interact with each other, you end up injured.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way you communicate with people's a big thing in the aviation industry now.
Well, look, this to me, when we look at what's actually happening, the skills that are going to be really important for humans are dealing with complexity. You know, there's problem solving and dealing with humans and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that, robotic processing automation can actually take care of in terms of, analysis or collation of stuff that others may have done in the past as humans. But now the level is rising in terms of the levels of sophistication we need to work at in terms of our communication. And the world is moving away from being quite transactional to being, and if it's transactional, it's online and you don't have to interact with a human necessarily, but it's moving to more complex solutions. And you have to have the thinking capability, the skills, the analytics, the problem solving, the patience to understand another person, see different perspectives, all that sort of stuff. That has to be cultivated and developed. And I just think that, a lot of people, it's just kind of taken for granted. But when you really dive into that capability in that area, there's a lot of skillful, work that gets done if you're going to communicate and engage and collaborate and work with people better. And I do remember once being invited by a company to come and speak to their is it alpha build team, not the beta testers, but the guys in the dark rooms building stuff. And they wanted them to understand about being client-centric. And I'm thinking, oh, that's very interesting. So, but because I've lived with Jobst for a long time, I've had a bit of practice. And yep, I know. So I went in there and I spoke to these people I had an hour with them. And I used facilitation skills. I asked them lots of questions. I got them engaged and things like that. And we actually had a great time. And we talked about stuff and, do they think about what they're building in terms of the end user and the customer and being customer centric and all of that. Anyway, at the end, the boss said to me afterwards, he said, "This has never happened before." I go, what? This is quiet. He said to me quietly, "This has never happened before." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "No one left. They all stayed for the hour. I've never had that happen before." Wow. And I went, "Oh, okay. I presume that's a good thing." And he went, "Oh, yeah." And so we were just sort of laughing. But that's the thing. How do you create really interesting, engaging environments for people to want to participate in, even if they're not used to, kind of doing that sort of stuff? We're all human. And we need to learn how to communicate well with each other. And the heart of good communication is building trust, being trustworthy. And to me, Harvard's actually said that trustworthiness is made of three things, and that is authenticity, empathy, and logic. And so if you are who you are and authentic, people can pick that up. If you've got empathy for them, you understand it. You don't have to agree with them, but you at least appreciate where they're coming from. And you've also got a good argument. You've got good logic behind it that they can, balance information off and compare and contrast. That really builds trustworthiness. And don't we need it now with all of the conspiracy theorists and all the rubbish that's going on out there at the moment that's preying on people's anxieties? And these false prophets pop themselves up promising nirvana, and they're providing simplistic answers to complex issues. And a lot of people don't, do the work to understand it and be discerning. So I do think we have a duty of care, any one of us, if we've got knowledge and experience, to calibrate that and find out where people are coming, calibrate the knowledge, appreciate and help each other find common ground so we can work together. That's what I've dedicated my life to, this sort of stuff, and to help people really work together, for good reason and good purpose.
I think the challenge there, Sue, is that shall we say, the black hat's task is in some ways so much easier, because all they have to do is throw up enough fear, uncertainty and doubt with populist arguments, and they win over the disenfranchised, frustrated people very quickly.
Yeah, which is why we can't let that happen. And that's why we have to actually work even harder to make sure that we can put up things that actually create space for people where they can come, where it actually helps things move forward rather than causes more fear, which is why it was interesting with March for Justice when I spoke to some of the people who were getting really miffed that we were taking over their territory, whatever that means. And I just said to them, we're not trying to, I've said, I'm not trying to sell this to you. You've already bought this product. I said, I'm trying to actually engage the people who are half asleep at the wheel, who haven't been paying attention to this. And we need to get them to step up, because if you get the big lump in the middle paying attention to something and they go, actually, you know what, enough is enough, that's when change will happen. That's how you create change. So you've got to have your messaging. I mean, my question to anyone on this, this call tonight, when I speak to businesses and, I ask them, who are most companies or organizations brochures, and I mean that in terms of whatever marketing material they're putting out there and messaging, who are most companies brochures written for? Themselves or the people they're trying to persuade, engage and influence, their customers, whoever they may be? So who do we think most companies brochures are written for?
The managing director.
Well, the company. But who are we trying to persuade and convince? And this is the challenge. A lot of businesses talk at their customers, they don't engage them.
Yep.
And that's why the messaging, whether it's March for Justice, it's Zoe Daniels' website, it's our Voices of Goldstein or my business, whoever business it is, you must write it for the audience that you want to engage.
Yep. How does this translate into what you're doing now, and how did you get involved with Voices of Goldstein?
Oh, okay. Well, back in October 2020, through Twitter and other means and things, a number of about 20 Goldstein residents got together like this, like we are tonight, because of lockdowns and whatever. And somehow we got together, had a meeting, and we were all really annoyed at the state of politics in this country. We felt like, particularly in Goldstein, the electorate I live in, that we were being taken for granted, that no one, they just thought it was a lay down misère, that it would just go to the Liberals again, blah, blah, blah. And so we just went, right, not happy. What can we do? And we then borrowed from the Voices of Indi, Kathy McGowan's campaign in Northern Victoria. We thought maybe we could start a Voices of Goldstein community and just see if we can actually bring people together who are feeling really frustrated with what's happening and lack of action on climate and lack of action on women's equality and, the corruption in government and all the things are really annoying us. That we're annoying individuals, but we didn't know if there were other people like that around. So I applied, Jobst and I helped build the website for Voices of Goldstein. So this is back in the beginning of last year, so before March for Justice happened. And we got a bunch of us together and we started that community. And I followed the principles I do for business and, make sure your messaging is client-centric and build out the website. And we just started sharing things around. and we got a Facebook group going and things. And then, a few more people came and a few more people came. And then, as we were building it, then this March for Justice thing, I went, hi guys, I'll be back in about 2 weeks, see you in a moment. And then went off and did March for Justice. And then we came back and we kept, because this is all about representative democracy and a better, system. We then managed to get John Hewson, and I emceed and had a community event with him in late April, and we did lots of events. And remember, all of this is during lockdown pretty much last year in Melbourne. And we managed to grow our membership and our supporter base to 1,000 people through lockdown, just through using social media, our networks, human networks, digital networks, etc. And then we agreed in June that we thought, because we didn't know if the election would be held in December, the federal election that is, or when it had to be, it has to be held by May this year, but we didn't know if it was going to be held in December. So in June, the committee got together and we said, look, let's have a crack at finding a candidate for, Goldstein, see if we can find a community-backed independent candidate. So because of my background in looking at, recruitment processes and things, we facilitated sessions with the community. What would we want in an independent candidate? What would they look like? And we consulted and we got input. Then I put the selection process together with the selection committee, and we started calling for, people's interest in standing as a candidate. And through that process, Zoe Daniels' name got thrown in the mix, but she wasn't in yet. So I stayed in touch with her. I had to keep that a secret for a very long time as we went through the whole process. And then as it got to the pointy end, late October, I said to her, look, we've got some good people. Do you want to step in or not? Because we have to get it in case there's an election in December. So
sorry, I missed a little bit there. So you knew Zoe beforehand?
I got introduced to Zoe in July.
Right.
But she wasn't on board to be a candidate. So I just stayed in touch with her and let her know what we were doing. I mean, when I heard that she could be interested, I was a bit excited, I have to say. And so anyway, I went back to her, kept in touch, but went back to her and said, look, we're getting to the pointy end. Do you want to step in or not? And she stepped in and went through the whole selection process and ended up becoming our candidate. And then basically what we did was we then had to get going. And I had no intention of being her campaign manager. I'm just basically what I call a gun for hire. I do various things and I've got skill sets. But because of the relationship we had built and she got to know me, she actually asked me if I'd be her campaign manager. And I went, well, I've never done that before. Gosh, this is a big ask. I said, can I have a moment to think about it? And I went away and thought, and I went, actually, this is a sales-led campaign. That's just what political campaigns are. They're sales-led campaigns. And this is what I do all the time. Maybe I have a skill set I could use, I could apply, and I don't have to do it by myself. So basically we've gone from November to now from no, like a very small group of people coming together to get the campaign team going to a 600+ person organisation in 11 weeks, 12 weeks. All right. And we've made sure that, and as I said, I learned lessons from March for Justice as well about what needs to be in place and stuff. So there's a fantastic campaign leadership team together. Jobst is responsible for all of the IT infrastructure, the database setups. He's responsible for the website and all the security around that. In fact, Zoe's website was they were trying to hack it last Thursday night. And so he made sure he, protected it and stuff like that. But we had our website at March for Justice try to be hacked as well. It was trying to be taken down, and he had to spend at least 6 hours on one that sort of Saturday holding it together. The petition was trying to be taken down. I won't say who it was, but I think I know who it was. But it was very interesting what was actually happening. But Jobst one-man band kept that thing up, and he makes sure from a security perspective. So we're really proud of him. So there's a whole bunch of us who've come together. We've got an organisational structure, we've got social media, we've got digital strategy, we've got our website, we've got HR, we've got, our ambassador program. Seriously, you go from nothing. In 12 weeks, you have this incredibly vibrant, organisation of 600+ people who essentially didn't know each other 11, 12 weeks ago. Some of us did, but most of us didn't. So we had a bit more of a run up to this one, not just 14 days.
Have you got any tips for Clive Palmer in running his campaign? Because he just seems to be a money one.
Well, he's, don't even get me started. So seriously, there's a whole lot of stuff I write about in terms of different things, but there's a bunch of behaviours, if you're ever interested, called unethical self-promoters. And I'll leave it at that. If you want me to put anything out there for you, you just see me. But I thought what you might like, I did actually write something here on March for Justice. I've just popped it in the chat box. There's an article I wrote like the Friday after the Monday's March for Justice, if you want to read it. I did that there as well. So, yep. Anyway, I've been able to apply, my life skills and knowledge and experience to a whole range of situations, and so has Jobst. And we're trying to help affect positive change for a better, society, and help people have good lives, and hopefully we won't, sort of crash and burn from climate change or inequality and stuff. So anyway, I turned 60 last November, and I'm dedicating the next 30 years of my life.
You're kidding.
No. Yep, I'm dedicating the next 30 years of my life to gender equality.
You're almost old enough to join
action.
this club, Sue.
Am I? Okay. And representative democracy, and, good business and integrity. And anyway, that's how it rolls for me.
Well,
there
fantastic.
You go.
Thank you. Any other questions before Peter cuts us off, which I'm sure he's about to do?
Rob Brown's got his hand up.
Peter, I was going to suggest that rather than giving Clive Palmer a leg up, we'd prefer to ask Sue if there's some tips she could give us on how to improve our membership growth in the club.
You've stolen my thunder, Rob, because in my closing remarks, I was going to ask her, would she have any spare time to promote the club?
Yeah, I'm sure she's got tons of spare time, haven't you, Sue?
Yeah, I'm running 2 full-time jobs at the moment, my company and Zoe Daniels' campaign for Goldstein. So I've resigned myself to the fact I'm working 7 days a week for the next few months to get this going. And it's interesting too, because of all the infrastructure that we can all share. I'm also, with bits and pieces that we've got, I'm helping different campaigns around the country, Curtin, Kooyong, all these different campaigns around the country. So we're sharing the love around, if you like, in terms of how to run really great community-backed independent candidates. So anyway, it's a sliding door moment. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm having a crack.
Well, we'll get back to you after we've got Zoe into Parliament, eh?
Well, that's the plan. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you'll have to have a bit of a lie down after I think we get that going. So, but look, I just want to say to everyone, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. As I mentioned before, we kind of kicked off officially. This is the first time Jobst and I have ever actually done a joint presentation like this before. So it was really nice. So I hope it was of value in some way, shape, or form for you.
I think it's been really good. Yeah. Yeah, well, I've enjoyed it. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it. Yep.
No, but thank you very much, and have a really lovely rest of the evening, and good luck with your club. Thank you.
You're very welcome to go and pour yourself a glass of wine now, or you hang
around.
Well,
I don't drink alcohol, which probably helps the complexion. But I am your designated driver if you need one, just so you know. Okay.
Okay. Right. Keep that in mind.
Before you go. Just on behalf of the club, thanks very much for speaking to us. If you were at the club, we would have a nice present for you, but unfortunately, I'll have to drink it after the meeting. But you say you don't drink, so I would have had to drink it anyway. But I must comment, I eventually got you on full screen, and you present very well. It looks like you are just speaking to me, and that's to me is very powerful.
Straight down the barrel.
Oh, well, I had lots of practice, and thank you very much for the feedback. I really appreciate that. And I want to make it as human to human as possible, even if we're just kind of, I'm just trying to think of the right word and it's escaping me, but light particles away, basically.
Well, if you hang around and look at the rest of the meeting with all the amateurs presenting, you'll notice a big difference from you. So it was most enjoyable to hear you speak. So thanks very much.
My pleasure. All the best, everyone. Take care. Thank you.
Sue. Bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, Oscar Peterson. Very nice of you to spend a few minutes on your piano entertaining us. But it's now time for our esteemed President, David Stoney Gibson, to give his report. Thanks, David.
Thank you, Peter. Seems I'm on again. I'm going to get this fairly brief. Apart from organising this meeting today, there's not a great deal that's been happening from my end. There's been an awful lot happening, though, with the transition team. And the switchover has now been, as far as I understand it, and there's a lot of it I don't understand, is pretty much complete. We are now, and there's been a little bit of buzz on Yammer about this, we are now beginning to look at the question of a replacement for Yammer as we go forward, because when we shut down our Microsoft services, then we won't be able to continue with Yammer. Now, at the moment, we would, well, how should I put this? There is one possibility, and this is not absolutely not a foregone conclusion at all, but the obvious possibility to be looking at is pardon me, Freudian slip there, Google Currents, which is the social media platform that comes with the Google web services that we are now using. So in the next few days, there will be a request going out on Yammer, basically asking and suggesting that anyone who's really interested and engaged with our social media, go and have a play with Currents. I've been playing with it. What I've been doing, for about a week or so, I was double posting everything. So anything I'd put onto Yammer, I would also go and put onto Currents, and thereby experience firsthand and with feeling, shall we say, how the two compare. And if you actually go to Currents, you're going to probably see some of my comments, but I'm not, I remain unbiased at the moment, wearing my president's hat. So there will be a little bit of information floating around fairly soon on how to get onto Currents, and that will actually be covered in part also by the next item on the agenda, which is Rob Brown talking about the first of a series on the Google Web Services. So really, that's my very, very short President's comments. I went to report, which puts us a couple of minutes ahead of time, I think. So thank you, and back to you, Peter.
Thanks, David. No, we're still running a bit behind, but we've got plenty of time. So as you mentioned, we've got, I'm led to believe this is going to be on a regular segment for the next few months till we get used to this Google stuff. So we've got Rob Brown giving us a bit of a rundown on using Google Work Services. Rob, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. I'm going to share my screen, and yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation this evening. It was very entertaining from our friend Sue Barrett. What I want to do is start with a first of several presentations. I won't be giving them all, but on there'll be subsequent monthly meetings where others will take similar sessions on various aspects of GWS. So Google Workspace is the new arrangement that we have to provide our email services and online services to club members. So the first of these will be about the thing that's most current now, which is the single sign-on login that's just being implemented today. So this comes in the wake of the migration of all our emails across from the Microsoft world to the Google Workspace world, which is now essentially complete. Having huge amounts of work done to achieve that, it was now time for us to move the single sign-on across from the Microsoft world to GWS. So single sign-on, what's it all about? What's a single sign-on anyway? All we're talking about here is a single sign-on to allow people as users to log into an application with a single set of credentials. So one username, one password, and thereby get access to a multitude of applications within the Google world. No doubt, like I'm not going to try and give a technical presentation on the details of how single sign-on works, because there's probably people in our club here and online tonight that could probably do a lot better job than I could. Just to introduce the fact that there's a change going on, and that it's a change that will affect everybody, and how it will be used, how you use the new situation. So, for example, your single sign-on with your melbpc.org.au username, same as for your email address, will give you access to a variety of things within the applications within the Google world. And you're probably well aware of the Gmail and Drive, Gmail being the email service that we're using. You don't need to use the actual Gmail application as such. You can continue to use the Outlook app if you choose to. You can use Thunderbird. But in the background, you can see the layout of the Gmail service. But in addition, we can access all of these other applications available from Google. They're all online applications. So Drive for document storage. Docs is an online word processor. Sheets is an online spreadsheet program. Slides is like a presentation program like PowerPoint. And Calendar you would possibly know about already. Meet is an online service similar to Zoom that we're using now. And the benefits are that we don't need to have multiple usernames and passwords for entering into those various applications. We can just have that single sign-on and away we go. You don't have to suffer the fatigue of having a dozen passwords to record somewhere or remember or whatever it might be. It's a little bit more secure in terms of helping to avoid intrusions from phishing and the like. And it makes it a lot easier for the club to manage user management, password management for people that are having struggles in that sort of area. And as it continues to help with the flow of the use of our services. So what's actually happening when you use single sign-on? So for example, a member wants to access the MelbPC user group worksite. Sorry, I've got a mouse going on here. So logging into melbpc.org.au, when you click member login, you will be directed to a site that runs in the background, and all it does is it presents you with a little panel that says put your username in and your password, and I'm going to run it through a little check. So GWS does a check to see whether the user is already authenticated, and then it opens the gate and redirects the user back to the website. So it's a security feature, and as well as being something that helps to minimize the management overhead for us. So authentication is performed and the session is then shared with other domains that we've just mentioned, and it does so in a secure way. So it's providing security for the websites, providing security for the users as well, and it's just helping things to run smoothly. So these are the apps that, and not all of them, they're just some examples of the apps that can be shared from Google Workspace from your single sign-on. Just run through the ones that I've already mentioned. So it'll be up to the user to see how much use they want to make of each of these individual applications, but it'll be something that you'll find for yourself what is useful and how it best fits your use of computers. So what does it look like? you'll recognise on the left the panel from a member login on our website currently or in the past. So it's used a Microsoft sign-on. You would enter a user name here with with an email address, click next, and you would proceed through the login to provide your password and be authenticated and go into the website as you've been used to. What it looks like is a little bit like this. This isn't necessarily exactly how it will look. We're hoping to get rid of this second login button here to avoid confusion. So the way to use this will be to simply click on sign in with Google. So there's two ways to use this. What I've found better is rather than actually enter your username and password here and then click on sign on, you're possibly better to just click sign in with Google and then go to the next panel, which will then prompt you to put those username password details in. And then you're going to be returned back to the website page and continue on with your website session. So not a whole lot of detail that's anything further, but just in terms of support, if you're having issues with it, I guess the iHelp people will be available as they usually are to help people with those queries. And just to mention that this email address is available now. It's being shared to 4 or 5 people. So if you see issues of any sort or concerns with content in the website or something's not working, you're welcome to shoot off an email to this address, and one of 4 or 5 of us will be able to pick that up and hopefully get something dealt with to assist with that problem. That's probably all I'm going to go into today, but I guess open the thing for any questions on that subject if people want to have some online discussion with that.
I think if they use the reactions and click on the raised hand, if you've got a question for Rob.
Yeah, I don't suppose, what we're talking about is complex in any way. It's just there's a change and it's getting used to something that just looks a little bit different to what we've all been used to. Give it a go, talk to your friends, see if they can help you out, if they've had an experience that leads you through the problem that you might encounter. But yeah, there'll be people available to respond if you get into trouble. I see David's got his hand up.
Yes, I do. Let me see, I've got my unmuted. Thanks, Rob, for that. The thing that always confounds me is, where do I get the password from? And I'm sorry if if you said it, I missed it. I was a little distracted here as well. What I find is that I bang my way into a site once and then I forget it and rely on the cookies to remember it. And so if you ask me 3 days later, how the hell did I get in there? I really couldn't tell you. So where does the password come from? And there's probably a few members there who are not quite sure yet how they're going to get that password. Or I could be wrong.
No, thanks, David. I didn't go into the detail of that, but that username and password is the same as what you have been using to get into your email in the MelbPC email world now, the GWS email. So if you've got an email address, joesmith at melbpc.org.au, there will be a password associated with that to get access to your mails. It's the same credentials, the same username and password. So hopefully when you had the tap on the shoulder to start moving your emails across to GWS, to the Google Gmail world, that you've made a record of that password. A lot of times people will set that up. It goes into cache on their browser or on their system, and they never look at it again for a long time. Months and months might go by. Hopefully you've got a record of that, because that's the same email address and password that you're going to need to access the single sign-on to the website.
Yeah, well, in my case, Rob, right from day one, 5 years ago, whenever it was, I just set up my MelbPC address to redirect to my quote unquote real world address. And so I've never actually logged into the email as such, except for that one time when I set that up. I do now, I'm now getting it, but I'm in a slightly privileged position that I can sort of yelp for help and someone is going to help the president quick smart. But for a lot of people, have there been notices sent out with new email addresses or new passwords, or should they just be there, or what do they do if they actually stymied at that point?
No, there is no change to the password. As I say, it's the same password that is already in existence and being used, whether it's in the background or consciously you're doing it. It's the same password as currently for your Gmail. So as I say, hopefully you've got a record of that. If it turns out you have forgotten that, you'll be able to, I guess, go through either, and maybe Stuart will tell me the right answer, whether they come back to the iHelp people to do a password reset, or you can reset it yourself. Stuart, what would you advise there?
Well, mostly we've got it set up so that the Google Workspace is set up so that members can reset their own password. Now, to do that, to qualify for that automatic resetting, if you like, they have to submit to Google a mobile phone number or an alternative email address so that Google can identify that the person trying to log in really is you. And in most cases, members would have submitted a mobile phone number at the very least to Google, and therefore they can get their own password reset and get into the unit, get into the Google Workspace. But if they haven't, of course, iHelp is always there to help. So any member that's stuck for any reason whatsoever to do with their computer and other things, then they can always call on iHelp.
Thank you, Stuart. Rob?
I haven't got that much more to go through, but I guess what I could do is a bit of a demo for people. What I find useful for the situation is to allow Google Chrome as a browser to set up individual profiles. So I'm going to just share my screen again. And the screen that's on there on your screen now is Google Chrome browser. And you'll see that there's 4 different icons here, and they each represent a profile. So here's my personal one. So that will, if I was to click on that, that would open up the browser and give me access to my personal Google Gmail, which I'm not going to do now. I've got one for the web development group and the SIG that I spend a lot of time with. But this one here is my MelbPC individual profile. So when you can set a color so it distinguishes from the other profiles. When I click on that and open this, you can see some icons that have that represent sites that I've previously been to. And right here in the middle is the MelbPC website launch. So when I click on that, straight away it will come up and you'll see the website that you're already familiar with. So when I then click on member login, and this is having done it once before, if you'll understand me, click on MelbPC login, that's what you get popping up. So I then can use my email address and my password, and I just go here and sign on with Google. So that will then take me to this page, and I can reconfirm the account that I wanted to use. So it's again, that's your email address in the Google Space world. And as I say, I've already got the password embedded with the profile in Google Chrome. So
I missed the bank account number. Could you go back, please?
yeah, you just have to keep up, David. So let me just reiterate that it's something that everybody can do to set up a profile in Google Chrome that will enable you to access the Google Workspace apps within the MelbPC domain. So hopefully that's helping people along the way. Like I said, the panel that you see when you log in has an extra login word. So you just go to will I go back and do it again? You go to the sign in with Google button near the top in blue. So I guess
2 questions there from Cedric and Steph, so you might like to pick up on their questions.
sure. Who would like to go first?
Cedric?
Yep. Just from what you were showing there, I'm going to change the question a little bit because you half answered it. You go to the members area on the club web page, log in. That gives you access to all the club's information, whether you want to look at committee minutes or you want to renew your membership and so forth. Does it? So it's the same password, to do that.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. The other thing I'd understood, and I want to try and get my thinking fairly clearly, is I'm going to have to be answering a few questions to people. I'm afraid I'm on a fairly steep learning curve, never having had much to do with Google before and trying to do a bit of eye help myself. I had understood that a landline number would work for people and they'd get a automated phone call with a computerized voice giving them a code which would identify them. Is that correct or is that wrong?
That may not be incorrect. I guess we would get some confirmation from those that have been more closely involved. For me, I've just stuck with my username and password,
Yeah.
but there is ways to have the 2-factor authentication and to have a backup confirmation of your ID through, I guess, a landline. I'm not familiar with that process myself, but certainly with a mobile phone, which I do use, and a second email to, as Stuart said earlier, to reconfirm your identity.
Yeah, well, quite a few members don't have mobile phones.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm thinking about those sorts of people. They have a landline but no mobile, and so I'm thinking about, and a lot of them would not have a second email address.
Okay, well,
Look, from memory, Rob and Cedric, from memory, it's you can use a landline for password recovery. You can't use a landline for 2-step verification.
Right.
And so it becomes, a bit awkward. You can use it for one thing, but not something else. In the video that we produced, which is on our website, showing you how to log in the first time. Sorry, the second video, which is 2-step verification. I might have got it back to front, actually. It's okay for one thing, but not for the other. I think it's 2-step verification that a landline is acceptable, but not for password recovery. It's either one or the other. So have a look at the video and that'll show you which way it is. It was months ago I did that, so I can't remember all the details.
Okay, thanks. I'll chase that up later.
Okay.
There's been a little bit in the
Steph Lancaster's got a question. And
yeah, okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Steph here. Rob, when you went to put your username in, you didn't actually type it in. I noticed there was a drop-down list and you clicked and chose it. That's my first query, if you could do it in slow-mo. The other one is you mentioned authentication process. I was trying to log in today. I think you said there was half a dozen members have had their login changed, and perhaps I was one of them. And I kept getting a message which said in WordPress my username and then later my password weren't registered. Now, does that make any sense to you?
I think that possibly means that you clicked on the other button, which I did mention we were going to try and get removed.
I did do that, but I got help from my help,
right?
And I did it another way, like doing it the proper way, I believe, as told. But I still had the same problem. So I didn't even get to put in my username, because as soon as I clicked on the square box login with Google, up the top was a message that my username wasn't registered in WordPress.
Okay.
Anyway, perhaps that's just a unique problem to me. But could you just go through that demo you did about putting in your own thing, because you seem to have a drop-down box. You actually didn't have to type it in, which I was doing. So I just wonder if that's
that's only because it's put it into browser cache. That's all that's happened there. I've logged out now. So this is how you would land at the site. And if you did it in an incognito window or private browsing window, it would look exactly the same. So at the moment, I'm not identified to the website as any particular individual. So to do that, I would log in. This would pop up. Now I can just start typing my email address in here.
No, you want to sign in with Google, don't you?
Well, like I say, there are two ways to do this. You can put your credentials in there and click that, but not that. So
that's correct. So you click sign in with Google, don't you? First?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to click here, sign in with Google on blank credentials.
Then
you choose your account, which, because I'm in a profile in Google Chrome, it's been able to identify one of the options that's been authenticated to me.
Okay. Well,
and I can come in like that.
So it's not working for me. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, look, we could probably try and help you out at some stage with that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Rob.
Okay, Rob.
It's probably all for me, Peter.
Yes, we're running a bit over time, but thanks very much for that. And I'm sure in this time next year we'll all be experts. So it's our next short bit is I Help, and tonight we've got Bert Ellis to is our I Helper. So I hope Bert's there. Are you, Bert?
Yeah, I'm right next to you on my screen.
Okay, over to you with any questions that people may have.
Yeah, I will. I was just going to talk a little bit about this GWS system, just briefly. Do you want me to take questions first, or how would you prefer to run it?
Your little talk might create a few more.
Yeah, well, I thought it might. Hopefully I can answer them too.
People with their hand up, Bert. Mary, Cedric and Steph, if you can all lower your hand, we'll know who wishes to ask a question.
Right.
Steph and Mary. Oh, someone's put.
Okay. Just perhaps I can answer that question after I just give you a little bit of an anecdote. It only happened last Monday, I think it was, Monday afternoon. Actually, yes, it was Monday afternoon. Cedric had to go somewhere, so I took on Monday afternoon. I got this particular call, and a gentleman was trying to log into his email, and he said, I haven't had any emails since December. And he hadn't switched to the GWS system, and he'd sort of been half put into the GWS system, but he hadn't followed it up. Anyway, so I was trying to show him how to do all the things, some of the things that were being shown just now, and how to log into the Google system. Anyway, at first, when I did it, I was trying to talk him through it. And he said, no, it's no good. I said, I'm trying to get this confirmation by phone call or by message. And this particular member didn't show a mobile number on our list of his details of his membership. And so he was trying to get this voice confirmation. Anyway, he just continuously had trouble. And I said, do you want me to connect to your computer? And he was familiar with TeamViewer, so I connected with TeamViewer. Anyway, it turned out it was quite funny. Turned out his problem was, as he was logging in, and you have to stipulate which country you're from so that they can send a message to your mobile phone or by voicemail to your landline. And he hadn't clicked on the country, and the first one that it defaults to is Afghanistan. So he was giving them a phone number, and he was saying, I wasn't getting the phone number. And it wasn't until I went on his computer and had a look, he was still in Afghanistan.
You'll be getting a visit from the Taliban soon.
Yeah. So anyway, eventually it was quite tricky then to change it from Afghanistan, because it sort of says, oh, well, this member is trying to get in from Afghanistan, we had real trouble. Anyway, but just doing a few tricks, because every time you start off with AUS or you try to put Australia in, it would just default to Afghanistan all the time. So I had to quickly type in AUS, and it would then finally go to Australia. Anyway, that was quite funny. And finally, when we did it that way, we eventually got his confirmation, and he finally got his emails, and that was great. We can't, don't always have a success in some of these cases, but that was a good one. So yeah, it's very important to make sure you put it in the right country. That's all I can say. Anyway, there was a few other things I was going to say which were related to iHelp. Just for everybody's information, Harry sent me some details about, well, just so that people appreciate, the sort of things that iHelp do. Last year, even though during the lockdowns and everything else, Harry's got here that we did a total of 1,127 jobs. So, that's quite a few. That's almost, the total number of members. But the other interesting thing was it involved 455 members. So that's a third of our members, roughly, I guess. I think I'm right about that. Came to iHelp for help. So, I thought that was pretty good. And hopefully we did help them all, and they all got a satisfactory result. What else can I tell you about? Yeah, I think that's about all. The only other thing is, I'm not sure if it came up clear enough, but on the 1st of February, sorry, let's go back one. Up to the 1st of February, everyone was still able to connect to their old to their email address on Microsoft, on the Microsoft email address. We've been duplicating, I've been told that we've been duplicating the email addresses on both Microsoft and GWS. So, but on the 1st of February, a lot of people were sort of weren't going into GWS. I was pretty late myself because, anyway, that's another story. But some people still haven't, and they sort of almost have to be forced into it. So I don't know if that's the reason, but anyway, from the 1st of February, the ability to log into your Microsoft address has stopped. So I don't know if that came through clear enough before, but it doesn't mean their emails have been blocked. It just means that to access their emails, they're going to have to go to GWS now. So that was just another point that we had to make. And all right, I think that's about it. I can probably take any questions and hopefully I can answer them, or partly anyway, and hopefully with the help of some of our other iHelp members who are here at the moment.
Thank you.
So-
Jackson, you've got your hand up. I gather you've got a question.
Yes, please. Well, a quick one about logging in, if I may. I've just gone to the MelbPC website, and that thing across the top of the screen wasn't there for me, but I clicked on something and found a member login. Logged in, and it knew my email and password in Google, but it then took me, it said it took it, it's got my current MelbPC, wrong button, top button. It's taken me through and then said choose a Google account, but the MelbPC one isn't there. Does that make any sense?
Is this the first time you've come in?
Into Google, the Google version of MelbPC, yes.
Yeah, right. That's why it's not there. It hasn't got you there yet. So you have to actually put in your MelbPC email address into there. You actually have to type. Once it's in there, it'll remember it. In fact, I think it's really your web browser that remembers it.
Yep, done all that, but then I got into Google and it said, okay, choose your Google account. It's got other Google accounts, and then up the top it says to continue to melbpc.org.au. Click on that and it says developer info, email imran@audienceware.com. Choosing an account will direct you to https://melbpc.org.au. Got it. And then back to choose an account.
Well, you only have one account, don't you?
One MelbPC. I've got other Google accounts.
Do you have other Google accounts? Because it will synchronize all your Google accounts.
Okay, there's 4 existing Google accounts there. Oh, I apologize. It's there at the bottom. Okay, problem solved. Now, when I actually put up my hand for something entirely different. Somebody had a fairly old laptop. It had been Windows 7. They'd done a free upgrade to Windows 10. I think it's an upgrade. And used it for a while and then pensioned it off and left it in the cupboard for a while. And then gave it to me and said, do you want to set this up for some refugees? And I said, fair enough. Turned it on. It did a few things, cleared all his data out, and left it on the table. Came back a while later and said, oh, we're just doing some updates. Came back and it said it had updated to version 20H2 of Windows 10, which I hadn't heard of. And it had deleted Microsoft Office programs. And then it also would not allow me to set Chrome as the default browser, which I Googled, found out more about. They said, oh, yes, it's a security thing. We've wiped out Chrome as the default browser and generally made a few other major changes. Does anyone know about that version of Windows 10? And is it normal for it to do upgrades that nature without asking? And is it likely that I can go back?
I might leave that open to anyone else who feels they could answer.
Yeah, if I can say a word or two. Yes, it is normal that if you've put a computer aside for 6 months and then turn it on, it'll go mad for the next day or two doing updates. If the Microsoft actually license expired, it it may, or Microsoft may, in their wisdom, delete it from you, but that's sort of another issue that I
It
can't
wasn't a
answer for.
subscription version. It was a bought version of Office 07, I think.
Oh, well, yeah, 07 is not supported. In fact, anything up to 2013, I think, is not supported
Sorry,
anymore.
maybe 17, sorry.
If it's 17 or 16, I think was might be 17 for the bought version. That should have remained there, but let Microsoft answer for themselves on that one. But it is quite normal for everything to update, and probably the issue with Chrome is that it might have been an old version of Chrome. Unless it was updated, then Windows should not prevent you from making it a default.
Yeah, so I said, I tried to set the default and it said, do you want what's it called? The main, Edge, or do you want Internet Explorer, or do you want to look in the Microsoft Store? They're the only choices. So I look in the Microsoft Store and Chrome is not there. I saw an article on ZDNet saying Chrome won't be allowed on Windows 10s.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. I'll hand that across to anybody else that cares to comment.
I'm getting really frustrated with the way Windows or Microsoft generally push so hard onto their stuff. You know, meetings, Microsoft meetings or meets or whatever it is, gets onto your computer and starts up every time and pushes its way into everything, and the Edge and everything else, they're just so pushy. Anyway, thanks for that information. If anyone else has got anything to add.
I'm not sure if I'm on yet.
You are now.
Yeah. Just to change to answering the other question you're asking, you should be able to roll back to the earliest installations for 30 days. That's what I've always understood Windows 10 allowed you to do. You should, if you go into Windows Explorer, you should see I'm trying to think exactly what they called it. I think they called it an old Windows old directory, I think that what the thing is called, and if that's still on your hard drive, you should be able to roll back. And I believe it's 30, you've got 30 days from when the update was done.
Thanks. Yeah, there were menu items on, I think, control panel for that. I might do a complete backup before I try it.
Yep.
Well, we've run 7 minutes over, and my understanding is that I help, and the Zoom will be open till everyone goes to bed. But I'll formally close the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. Thanks to our 2 speakers who aren't there. I think you've declared the vote for the Life membership, David, which was on the agenda, but I think you've already done that.
Yep.
Thank you, Bert, for your bit, and I think you're probably staying around if anyone has some questions. But the recording will now finish, and that's the end of the meeting, and we'll be together again on March the 2nd. I'm not sure whether live or Zoom or hybrid, but hopefully things virus-wise will have eased up a bit by then. So good night.